Hey everyone, I hope everyone is safe and taking care of themselves in quarantine time. Yeah, we are all going with a very hard time to face in our life. So generally what happened that when we have change in our life, we feel a bit difficult to handle and situation that way. So today I thought to talk about project glossary. So in generally in IT industry or in project, when you get a new people involved in a best practices environment, when you get a new people in your company to be involved, in a product to be involved, generally what happens, they are not aware with a particular terminology in the project that what does mean by what. So when they get interacted with you, everyone will give training and explain that what does mean by what. But at the end, not 100% KT is given and training is given. Sometimes it's just formality. They give you access to the Udemy, access to the corporate plural site account and those things. So you go through that, but not real life experience that you gain with that. So I thought one day when I was training a one resource that why can't I write project glossary where I use all the terminology and terms which is being used commonly in my project and project management terminology experience from last at least 9 years, right? So let me start with that. Environment. So this is the all the glossary that I have written. So I'll start with the first one. What does it mean by environment? Environment is the setup of the software and tools. Sorry, where you install the required application for your development activity or any other activity on a machine. There are multiple types of environment which we use: QA environment, development environment, UAT environment, staging environment, and production environment. So what is a development environment specific to that? The environment where you generally do your development activities are being taken care of uh, or your development everyday code, and you do your unit testing over there. Means you validate all the features independently, right? All the things which you implemented are working properly or no, and those things. QA environment, once you are done with your unit testing and your code development, you will pass that feature to the QA environment. So QA team will be testing that QA code, whether as per the functionality, as per the expected functionality, whether that's working or no. So generally QA environment will have separate database, separate installation, separate configuration, separate services, separate nodes, separate machine, where no one will touch. So when QA is doing activity, no one is interrupting that activity. So their assumption, their thoughts are really aligned with quality assurance. UAT environment. So the only thing is that before you give your code to real users, what you will do, that where end user and client will check your user acceptance criteria, that for small amount of user base, you test your code whether it's working well for them, what's their experience, what is their what do you call it, what's their observations, and what do they think, that what kind of misbehavior is there, whether they like, whether they don't like. In some product based companies, what they do is that they check the behavior of the user, that how they feel when they do something. Yeah, the environment should be similar, would be similar to production. So performance testing, security testing, and activity can be taken care. Some application has a vulnerabilities. Okay, so what do you call it, security testing can be done over there. So total OAuth top 10 testing, and those cases, if you want to file that, you can do that. In UAT, staging environment, specific to the production data. Staging is almost very similar to production, where you have a same size of data, same format of the data, same configuration of the cluster size, and those things, infrastructure can be used for performance validation. If you see that, oh, I brought one service, now how long it will take, what is the throughput, what is the latency of the service, right? The outcome of the service, how it's behaving, that those application activity you can validate over the UAT, over the staging. And production environment, as everyone knows, that production is a real user based environment where the live system will interact with the real users. By deploying application to the production, make sure you have validated the functionality, you have validated the performance test, you have validated the security penetration testing if you have any vulnerability in a system, right? So there is no harm in letting the user to access your application unauthenticated. Functionality requirement. The application functionality means that what is expected behavior for any application, then what kind of actions would it take based on different input, based on different calculation, right? Based on the business functionality, people write the functional requirement document that is known as the FRD diagram. So FRD document, and the product requirement document is known as the PRD, where you mention all the calculation and simple output. The performance requirement, the expected execution time for an application, that how much it will take to complete each individual operation and the task, and overall performance time. That thing would be written in performance requirement, saying that, let's say I want system which can handle the 1000 requests per microsecond, let's say, right? For the same purpose. You want to say, I want to process the 22 TB of data in half an hour. Okay. I want to, consume the 1000 queues in 2 seconds. Those are your benchmark. Those are your, what do you call it, performance requirement. And storyboard, the agile methodology, which is not the waterfall. In waterfall, what happened? Step by step. You do one by one. If requirement is done, then you will do this. This is done, you will do this. This is done, this you will do. That works probably when independent person works like that way. But when you work with agile team, okay, where you estimate properly your work, you take as per the state of the work, and the entire team works together. Sometimes customer teams work with you, vendor team, and two vendor team work together. In a large scale project where, let's say, 2,000 people work together in one project, those kind of projects would be handled very precisely and very concisely with the agile methodology, right? Where you need to manage this storyboard. So stakeholder and management people can see what's the progress of the people. You can figure it out, the progress estimation and those stuff activity from the storyboard, right? So what we do is that we break up the all work into different chunks, which can run parallel, which can have a sequential, and plan accordingly your, what do you call it, high level plan, execution task, and you have a Gantt chart and say dependency and the resource allocation and those things you put over there, right? Each chunk can be taken in execution by different sprints. And generally people, what they do, that they have a sprint of 2 weeks and 3 weeks kind of scenario, and then they plan accordingly, and then they start allocation of the resource with the allocation of the developers and the work. If those chunks cannot be completed in a single sprint, what happens if the chunk which you have estimated, it cannot be completed in a single sprint? Then you will further divide that and estimate accordingly that it can be completed in a story thing. Sprint in agile methodology, the group of tasks or subtasks which would be taken by team members to complete, that's known as a sprint. Team activity for this would be sprint grooming, sprint planning. So 2 week sprint, 3 week sprint, you have entire team meeting where you talk that how many people are there, how many people are on leave, how many holidays are there. Based on that, you say the estimated story points are, let's say, 50. Okay, so your allocation of the task would be 50, right? You can't allocate more than estimation. So let's say each day you have 8 working days and 5 days of week. So you have how many hours? 40 hours. Now you have got 5 people. 40 into 5, you have got 200 hours. So the 2 weeks, 200 hours, you will take the work estimated, which can be completed for 200 hours. You will not overestimate, you will not underestimate, because that's not the correct best practice to do that. Let's talk about epic. The large body of the work that can be broken into multiple stories. Let's say POC of incremental delta load in the big data, right? Which is POC, which we don't know the approach, whether you will use delta lake, whether you will use the Unity, whether you use the CDC, whether you will use the CT of the MS SQL Server, or whatever you do, right? That's not estimated. So what you will do, you will create the epic and create the stories. And so many people, many teams from different vendor, customer, and the people can work together and create the epic. But your goal is epic, right? Which can obviously go to multiple sprints, because you know that it cannot be completed in one sprint. Story is a small chunk of the work which can be completed and taken by individual person, right? If your story by any chance is not being completed, then it will get spill over to next story. That's known as spillover, next sprint. Task, an individual activity under the story. Let's say you have a story that I want to story that user accept the application where they can do sign up. So when you do sign up, you have to create the UI, you have to create API in backend, let's say Spring Boot, and then you have AngularJS. You will create this kind of form. Now you will analyze that, you will create a wireframe. This wireframe is one activity, analysis is one activity, creating UI is one activity, creating backend is one activity, APIs, and consume and expose API is also that activity, as I told. Then you will, let's say, have one more task that is validation of the security vulnerabilities, right? You will validate your SQL injection works over there, whether XSS work over there, whether CSRF works over there, whether you have given correct course over there, which can consume the API from actual IP address or no. So that thing you will validate over there. And those are single activities and tasks, right? So you will use and create those as a task. And task has own status. Task has like dev in progress. One task I forgot to put here, which is to do. Means you have planned to do that, but you have not even started. This task is planned, but not yet started. This task can be, let's say this task may be assigned or unassigned. It really depends, you know. It is not something which you will think that, oh, whether it's required or not, probably you need it, probably you don't need it. So once that task is in to do, let's say if I'm a developer, I'll take one task and then I will change the status to do to dev in progress, because I'm working on that. So once I'm done with the development activities, which involves many tasks, like analysis, wireframe, exposing API, consuming API, and do the integration testing. Also, I will do unit testing. Once that is done, each task, if you think, can be tested by QA, you will tell that ready for testing. Development activity has completed and can be given to QA for testing. That's a status called ready for testing. And when QA take that, QA will start testing, right? At that time, QA will shift that status to QA in progress. So QA team is doing testing on this task. And when QA sign off that, oh, it's working functionally well, there's no security vulnerability, there is no functional defect, there is performance accepted as per the acceptance criteria. Yeah, that's also a good thing to ask. So every time I teach someone, I learn myself. So yeah, so those everything is tested, and when you think that you can deploy that feature, each task or each story for the end user, then you can say done. Done means it's ready for production. All things are being tested and validated. Acceptance criteria means that as per the business functionality and requirement mentioned in its story to sign off. Yeah. So what is estimation? The amount of time taken for each story or the task, right, is known as estimation. Generally, estimation can be given in Fibonacci series 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, and 13. These estimation numbers are also known as story points. Story points are considered based on the complexity of the story and the task. ETA. Every time people ask you, right, what is ETA? Every time people ask you what is ETA, you probably yourself get sweated. Sometimes people get a bit nervous to answer, because basic thing that your estimation skill is how well it is, how well you understand that story. So before you understand story, what you need to do, you will never gonna estimate that, because you will yourself, you don't know what is that. And then if you are just estimating that, that means you are just guessing. Okay, many people fail to estimate correctly, many people fail to judge themselves, that what they have to do. But still some people are a bit take lightly, okay, I'll do it, so it tell, okay, take 5 days. Sorry. So when you don't estimate properly and just say it will take this much time, probably you are making a wrong impact and impression to everyone in the company and enterprise system, right? So yeah, estimation is amount of time taken for a story or the task is known as estimation. So your ETA, the date where your story and your task would be ready for the QA or would be ready for the production environment. So the feature can be deployed end to end to the system and the product. So generally in product-based company, you get end-to-end requirement, end-to-end feature, which you own that. Many people, uh, uh, are afraid to be honest, to give estimation, are afraid to take responsibility and ownership. But generally in the product-based company and some service-based company too, that when you have ETA, you own that responsibility. Means you do testing, you check security vulnerabilities, you check everything end to end. So there's nothing concept of QA and developer or the security tester. Everything is done by one person, right? So you get requirement and you deploy by yourself to the production. But yeah, not every company does that. So it really depends, Yeah. Deadline, the date when stakeholder and customer have planned that we want to give this feature to our customer, right? So they also plan something. Also remember that customers are responsible for their customers, and everyone love customers, even as product-based company or the service-based company. So the difference between service-based company and the product-based company, as per my opinion, is that in product-based company, you work for your company's customer, right? So you still care for them, you still work for them, because your product is making money from customers. In service-based company, you work for a customer where they have customers, so you have one layer more. So some people has a big myth. If I work with product-based company, I learn more. If I work with service-based company, I don't learn more. So I believe, and I tell them that, that if you work with service-based company, you understand a bit more, because you deal with customer relationship, you deal with engagement, you deal with what is customer success for you, right? Probably in product-based company, you don't understand that, because you have product manager and those people who are not directly communicating. So your customers are not communicating directly with you, right? So they decide the plan, roadmap, and then they will see every time I do something, I learn one more word. Roadmap was missing. So the date where stakeholders and customers have planned that expected task story sprint would be completed by then. So they decide the deadline that we want to go for production, entire product on this date, and individually feature-wise also deadline. Roadmap is the something which you plan, that that how your next phase looks like. What is your plan looks like? What do you think? What you want to give feature to your customer, right? How your customer satisfaction looks like. Those things roadmap in a work. Minutes of meeting. MOM, the instant written record and notes of the meeting. And then you have other meetings. Grooming meeting. Sprint grooming meeting is generally scheduled to get all team members in the same page with respect to the goals of the sprint, right? Whether are you achieving the goal. So generally, there would be a Scrum Master who designed the plan of the Scrum and put the backlog, work and task, and then in a meeting, it is explained to the way of priority of each story and task and item in backlog. Backlog planning is also kind of similar meaning, take place in the same meeting, right? Sprint planning and meeting, planning meeting. You might hear a common complaint from everyone. I'm wasting too much time in meetings and don't have enough time to do actual work. Everyone tells that. It really depends on what would be discussed in that meeting, right? If you don't know developers that what you need to do, what is the real expectation from customer, or the customer communication happen with the product base or the project manager or the scrum master or technical lead, right? To understand the system. Let's say this architect, there's a system architect or solution architect who understand that, side impact of each feature, how the feature, the large view of entire system, and how the features will interact with each other and how you will be deploying that to system. Would that be any other impact in existing product? Like doing a change tracking in MS SQL Server, whether that will create a deadlock in the system, in the transition system or no? You don't know that because you are focus oriented with one thing, that I want to do change tracking and want to track the changes happening in the system, in RDBMS system, and trigger that. But you don't know how it will impact, right? So that's the reason people needs meeting. Without meeting and collaboration, you can't succeed that. So as I said in this document, that it all depends on what would be discussed in the meeting, right? And what would be the outcome of the meeting. Close the last sprint, celebrate what you have achieved in the last sprint. You will decide what you want to do with unfinished item that you have, which you were not able to finish somehow. Right? If you finish them well and good, all cheers, guys, right? Clarify the team availability, that how many people would be on leave, how many holidays we will have. You will go through backlog items quickly and discuss the readiness of those items. Most importantly, it will help us to discuss and adjust, negotiate your backlog and the sprint based on the more complex stories versus the most priority stories for the production fix, or most priority features that customer needs that, right? At the end of the meeting, you will agree on sprint calls and you will start next sprint. What is steering committee? The committee decides the business priority and goals. In case of delivery is not happening on time, in case, let's say, your outcome is not visible to a customer, it's not visible to customer end users, right? They are not satisfied, they have complained that this is failing, this is not working, UI is breaking, it's not working with the mobile device. Those kind of complaints, okay, where it gets to the level where they need to highlight and escalate that, those things would be taken on and organized by steering committee. The committee decides the business priority and goals. Generally in the IT business vendor customer relationship, members would be a mix of both sides. There will be few people from customers, few people from the vendor, like technical lead, architect, project manager, product manager, and the directors from engineering department. Project owner, the person who owns the project and the product. He understands in and out of the business functionality and also understand the impact to the customers, right? So the vision that he has or she has, that help you to explain in technical terms. And also he can, he can propagate the value proposition, that by doing this, by implementing this, what would be the value to the stakeholders and investors if needed. Also, he and she is responsible for the plan for the roadmap, next phases, and executing that. Delivery manager, the person who is responsible for project delivery for the customer, he and she manage the customer relationship, sorry, and make sure that business delivery happens on the promised time to the customer. It also seeks information on any challenges, blockers, and performance matrices of the team members from the customer. So in case of any risk and escalation, the customer draws first attention to the delivery manager. I did a mistake. It's he also seeks information. Daily Scrum call and daily stand-up. The team meets once daily to give an update on what is accomplished daily and what they are planning to do tomorrow or the next day. In case of any blocker to start work on next day, they will raise here. All team members will help them to understand if they have any gap in between understanding, right? They should raise on the same day if they have any blocker of daily stand-up. Each and every individual team member will give an update to the Scrum Master, a team lead, and team members, manager, and customer representatives, right? So let's say if you are out of track, then you will tell truly and honestly that you are out of track. You will not say, I'm ready, I'm done, I'm doing something, I'm trying something, right? Which makes everyone uncomfortable. Those excuses makes everyone very uncomfortable to decide, to plan, to take decision, or do anything, right? So you needs to be very honest when you give your update, that what is truthful. Generally, if you give honest update, if you give true, that let's say if you are not able to do something, you share your screen and you explain to people. Now generally stand-ups are daily 15 minutes, 20 minutes, but you can have extended calls after that and you talk in that. The collaboration is more important, so you will not ping one-to-one people, you will explain and inform everyone, so everyone understand that what is going on somewhere, right? If they have been figured out that something has gone wrong later, then obviously that customer or management will be pissed off of you. So my advice is that please make sure that you raise your concern as sooner than you make it late, and at the last day of production you say that, oh, I'm not able to do that, then no one has any hands to help you, right? And many people do that, believe me. Defect: if the behavior of the code changes with respect to the expected behavior which were being given in the requirement of the code, then the behavior of the code with respect to the functionality is known as the defect. So misbehavior in any code functionality is known as a defect. So generally QA is the effect. What is vulnerability? The flaw in the code, which allows legitimate users to perform unauthorized access to the application. Let's say if you're uploading any file, so you have not restricted the extension. So someone can upload .sh file, .exe file, and it can be executed after that. So it can harm that environment where you have real user data, can steal the credit card information, can steal the password credential, can send the data from there to somewhere, right? Can download the unauthorized data over there, can delete the data, can encrypt the data and send it back. So it can do anything if you don't weld it properly. So please make sure that you welded your security flaws. Mostly you can go to owasp.org and figure it out, top 10 vulnerabilities, and then just validate those aspects. So what is a node? The single machine where you have core, CPU, hard disk, and the memory. Cluster, the group of nodes and machine. Infrastructure, the setup of server, machine, application, and tools that are required to successfully execute certain applications. Deployment, movement of the code from local to any other environment such as QA, UAT, and production. Data node, nodes where the file system is stored, where create, delete, and read operation goes. Though these nodes are responsible for request and response to the file system from various clients. Name node, the master node which regulates the file system and regulates access to files by the client. Spark job, application created through a Spark. You can run that on cluster, and when you run that, it becomes the Spark job. Yeah, so this was first part of Glossary in project management, and this was a bit intuitive and kind of essential on when you start picking a project, because most of the terminologies are data oriented. But yeah, it's very common. I'll come up with next part probably when I have time. For now, enjoy and have fun and be healthy. Take a rest and be safe indoor. Thank you so much. Bye.